Hello, and a warm welcome to this special presentation in the mould of my Scientific Scotland series. My name is Shane Cloud, and my mission, as always, is to bring science and tech stories about Scotland up on a par with lochs, mountains, and glens when it comes to planning any visit. And today, we consider a whole city that themed itself on one piece of tech. Dundee, so-called City of Discovery. Modern Dundee has a vibrant design and graphic arts scene. It's home to computer games, a professor of comics, and many thriving biotech companies. But 100 years ago, it was a place humming to a different tune, the sound of plane, chisel, and saw, one of the last places to specialize in construction of wooden ships when everywhere else was turning to iron and steel. And from that came something unique, a floating science laboratory called the Royal Research Ship, or RRS Discovery. As usual, we will break the talk into three sections: must, should, and could. First, a quick tour of the ship itself, pointing out its important tech and new design features. Then, why and how it was built with no planned role in commerce or trade, before arriving at the main course, the science it carried out and the men who did it. Then, finally, we ask just how did it survive this long, and what did it do in middle and old age before it became a museum. So, let's go take a closer look at this City of Discovery. So here we are in Dundee, a city of around 150,000 people, situated on the east coast of Scotland, about 1 hour travel time from Edinburgh up north. It sits on the north bank of the impressive River Tay and has been a port city since medieval times. Its easy access to the east, to the North Sea, gave it early advantage for Baltic trade, but also for whaling in Arctic waters, starting in the 18th century. Dundee whalers soon got used to working in the ice packs of the north, hunting the elusive whale. Except once, famously, in the 1880s, an unfortunate whale came to visit Dundee itself. Spotted in the Tay, the poor creature was hunted by an armada of ships, and its skeleton now sits in the local museum, the Tay whale. And more recently, a modern sculpture inspired by the whale sits on Dundee waterfront, complete with whale sounds. But our focus is on something else. Coming into view, a three-masted ship, technically a bark because of its sail deployment, a wooden ship from that golden period over 100 years ago that has survived, a ship not designed to hunt whales, but actually to explore their habitat and help understand them, leading ultimately to efforts for global sea mammal conservation. A purpose-built research ship, in fact, the RRS Discovery, built here in Dundee in 1901. She now sits in dry dock between an award-winning museum on the left here, telling her story, and the recently opened V&A on the right, Scotland's National Design Museum. And don't be fooled by her dry and static life now. She has been on many wild adventures, and we will tell some of them here. And in the spirit of Scientific Scotland, of course, always emphasising her contributions to science and tech. The V&A is an appropriate neighbour, as Discovery may look from here like a standard sailing ship, but she bristles with innovation and craft in 20 different types of wood, and not just local timber, but woods sourced from around the world, from the forests of Oregon to the jungles of South America. Like the famous Dundee cake, made with imported almonds and bitter Seville oranges, she is a reminder of Dundee's globally connected past. A past you can now actually see brought to life using modern tech. The museum has recently opened a 360-degree computer-simulated dynamic panorama of Dundee as it was in 1901 when Discovery was built. Located in the cupola, you can see it on top of the museum there. It gives fantastic views of old and new Dundee. So let's go get a closer look to the ship itself and see some of this important tech. So here is her bowsprit, which could carry up to 3 jib sails to increase sail area, and showing the British flag, the Union Jack, appropriately enough, because one reason the ship was built here was a result of a Buy British campaign, instead of going to Norway, who had the most experience in ice ships at the time. So let's take a look across the ship itself. First thing to notice is the raking, the curved shape of the bow, especially designed to ride up on the ice sheet and break it using the natural weight of the ship. 1,600 tons displacement makes her quite a small ship for global adventures, around 50 meters long and 10 meters wide, but meeting the required spec of providing a floating, hardy laboratory for up to 50 men with provisions for 3 years away. We see our sleek black hull, disguising actually a hidden strength. You see the hull is not one layer of timber, but a 3-layer oak sandwich with Riga fir on the inside, oak, and then tropical greenheart on the outside, strong like steel but flexible to withstand compression in the ice pack. In places the hull is over 2 feet thick. This was combined with a design of 7 watertight transverse bulkheads, each with oak cross beams, making her unsinkable, surely the strongest wooden ship ever built. But notice, there are no portholes in the side. They would lead to structural weakness in the ice. So, how do you get light into the ship? Well, we'll see that later. The 3 masts, fore, main and mizzen, are seen here. They're recently restored together with the full rigging, emphasizing that sail was her main form of propulsion. But we also see a funnel. She had a steam engine, but being so small, she could not carry enough coal to last the full expedition, hence the need for men who could both work the complexity of a 3-masted sailing ship and stoke the 2 boilers with 6 tons of coal a day required. But the engine was key for her science, allowing her to come up close to the edge of the Antarctic ice sheet for the very first time in history. Sailing ships couldn't risk it before that. But now, let's go to the other end, to the stern, and see a view that not many visitors can get to expose some other design secrets. So here, a rare view from below in the dry dock in Dundee. Again, no sign of portholes, but also no bilge keel. Normally fins running along the keel of ships to stop them rolling. Here they're missing, so they would not compromise the hull in the ice pack. So this thing rolled in the slightest sea, and it went to the wild Southern Ocean. Even now, many ships avoid the rough seas there. Not surprising then that it was recorded with rolls of plus or minus 47 degrees, and Mawson, the famous and tough Antarctic explorer who sailed in her in the 1920s, commented it was like being in a seagoing rodeo, rough enough to throw men out of their bunks. This was not just a frustration for the men, but many science samples were lost to breakage in rough weather, and fins were finally fitted in the 1920s. But as we scan right, we see another unique feature, the rudder and screw, originally controlled from 2 wheels at the rear of the ship, taking 4 men to keep her on course, with the 2-blade propeller fed from the 450 horsepower triple expansion steam engine, all built in Dundee. Now the whole assembly, rudder and screw, can be withdrawn into the ship for protection from the ice. This was helped also by the overhanging stern. We get a good view from here, now propped up by the support poles. This helped keep ice away from the steering, but also gave shelter to the poor wheelmen in rough following seas. The boat tended to be lifted on such waves rather than having them break over the deck, and this was much appreciated by the crew apparently. Eventually, however, steam-powered steering was fitted on a bridge amidships with a better view, so let's go take a look. So here we are on the bridge, fitted much later in the 1920s. It gave a better viewing position, but as we can see, still little shelter from the fierce weather. Some canvas covers would be fitted, but that was all. And here we see 3 main features needed for bridge control. First, the engine order telegraph sitting up proud from the deck, or EOT, to request changes in speed to the engine room. Then, as we scan left, we come across a slightly robotic-looking structure. Right in the center of the ship, a binnacle, or floating compass. You can see carefully there's 2 black iron balls called Kelvin's balls on each side, movable for calibration in different parts of the world. Calibration involves sailing in a circle, rather like us rotating our phones to calibrate smartphone compasses today. Magnetic observations in the southern hemisphere were a key science objective from the start, but again this led to some discomfort. No ferrous metal allowed midships, and so the men could not have springed mattresses, instead trying to get comfy on horsehair. We now come past the main museum complex and again see how exposed the bridge was, before coming round to see the third key element of the bridge control, a wheel itself, now just a single one because of its steam-powered control to the rudder at the reel, with another binnacle in front. So let's go take a closer look at the front, the bow, to see how they solve the problem of no portholes. So here we show 2 views of the prow of the ship, and we see some standard prow fare. For example, an anchor over here on the left and its capstan over here on the right, and these distinctive white funnel-shaped dorade vents providing some ventilation to the decks below. But a couple of features I want to point out which are quite unique to this ship. The first is this small feature here on the left. You see it's in fact a porthole in the top of the ship. Instead of being on the side, they were originally like this, flush mounted with the decking, allowing light to get to the lower decks of the boat. A very clever idea, you might think, except the problem was that this ship was full of around 50 men overwintering in the Antarctic, and they took with them nearly 2,000 pounds of tobacco, so they all smoked, and ventilation was a serious problem. So they had to revise the design of this flat vent here, and they came up with this brilliant idea shown on the right here. The same kind of idea with a glass top, but now raised up to allow ventilation, to allow air into the thing below. And the upper deck of this ship is studded with these. We will see some views later on. Not a great idea because these sit proud of the deck and are there to be tripped over. In fact, they were known as ankle bashers, of course, and it must have been quite the challenge to get about the deck of this rolling ship in the Southern Ocean, trying to do your business of keeping the sails in ship-shape fashion and keep banging your legs on these things. So yet again, a unique design feature of this ship, but one that is designed for purpose rather than comfort of the crew, which has been a theme with this little tour of the ship. So let's turn now and see how all this worked as a mobile science laboratory and what kind of science was carried out on this ship. And to do that, we're going to move to chapter 2 and examine the origins of the whole project itself.